Rick Ruth, a living legend of U.S. public diplomacy. Rick's influence on American public diplomacy and on U.S. foreign policy has been enormous. Public diplomacy professionals today work in a world largely shaped and formed by Rick and his vision. His leadership in building and strengthening cultural, professional, and educational exchange as a critical tool of foreign policy has impacted tens of thousands of lives around the world. Who is Rick Ruth? Rick was born in Corpus Christi, Texas. His father was an officer in the U.S. Navy, and the family moved often. Rick went to high school in San Diego, California, which he refers to as his hometown. Following graduation from high school, Rick attended the University of Arizona, where he developed his lifelong fascination with the Russian language. He graduated summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa with degrees in Russian language and literature, and he continued his career in academia in Arizona as a teacher of Russian. One fateful day in the corridors of the University of Arizona, Rick stopped in his tracks. On the wall was tacked a poster in Rick's beloved Cyrillic alphabet, a photo of the Cathedral of St. Basil in Moscow. "Speak Russian and get paid for doing it," it read. An address for a government building in Washington, D.C. was listed below, 301 4th Street Southwest, the U.S. Information Agency. Rick decided to give it a shot. A few months later, he was touring the Soviet Union as an American Russian-speaking exhibit guide as part of USIA's traveling exhibit program. The year was 1975, and the Cold War was in full swing. Rick returned from his time as an exhibit guide, intrigued by the life of diplomacy and crossing cultures. He took the Foreign Service examination and soon found himself a newly minted Foreign Service officer working for the U.S. Information Agency. Before he knew it, Rick was in language training, studying Arabic for an assignment to Amman, Jordan. After 2 years, learning the ropes as a junior officer trainee in Jordan, he transferred to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and following that returned to Moscow as an assistant cultural affairs officer. In 1983, Rick and his young family returned to Washington, D.C. The nomadic life of a Foreign Service family grew weary for them, and Rick shifted from Foreign Service to civil service. His passion for public diplomacy remained constant, though, and Rick took on a new leadership role as Chief of Staff for the Director of the U.S. Information Agency. With the end of the Cold War, the misbegotten idea that public diplomacy was a thing of the past gained traction throughout the U.S. government. USIA's budgets were slashed, programs and centers closed, and the ranks of PD professionals dwindled. Rick soldiered on and worked tirelessly on the congressionally mandated consolidation of the U.S. Information Agency into the State Department, which took place on October 1, 1999. Rick's dedication helped ensure that public diplomacy would not be completely lost in its new home at State. Drafting the Foreign Affairs Manual regulations that would establish the new Undersecretariat for Public Affairs and Public Diplomacy, Rick carved out a space for public diplomacy at the State Department. Each Undersecretary in the State Department is designated by a one-letter code. P was taken, as was D, and in no circumstances could an Undersecretary be designated by 2 letters, let alone 2 letters that belong to the Deputy Secretary and Undersecretary for Political Affairs. So what would this new Undersecretary be called? Ruminating with rigor on this rare Rubik's Cube, Rick Ruth realized the right response: R. And so, Rick Ruth embarked on the next phase of his public diplomacy career, serving as Chief of Staff to the first R, Undersecretary Evelyn Lieberman, and her successor, Charlotte Beers. The trauma of September 11, 2001 jolted the United States into the realization that public diplomacy was anything but out of date and unnecessary. The day after the attacks, Rick was called to State's 7th floor to join a steering committee coordinating the State Department response. In the weeks and months that followed, Rick was instrumental in establishing key programs that followed, including the Yes Exchange, English Access, and more. In 2002, Rick left R to join the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, reporting to Assistant Secretary Patricia Harrison. As the new director of ECA PEACH, that's Policy, Evaluation, Alumni, and Cultural Heritage, Rick built these new initiatives into perennial staples of ECA. Rick then moved on to his role in the Bureau as Senior Advisor under Assistant Secretary Ann Stock. He not only provided sage advice to ECA Bureau leadership, but served as a mentor to hundreds of civil service and foreign service public diplomacy professionals, including interns, fellows, and anyone who shared his passion and interest in educational and cultural exchange. For his many years of leadership and building and shaping educational and cultural exchange and advancement of U.S. foreign policy, Rick was awarded the Edward R. Murrow Award for Public Diplomacy by the Department of State in 2016. Rick Ruth's contributions and leadership in the field of educational and cultural exchange, his generosity as a mentor and advisor, and his constant good humor and kindness make him a model civil servant and a true patriot. He has made ECA a better bureau, state a better department, the U.S. a better country, and the world a brighter place. Thank you, Rick, for your service.